Welcome to the 8-Bit Instructor Podcast, a show dedicated to helping you level up your instruction in order to craft authentic learning experiences for both you and your students. I'm your host, Lee Tucker, a high school English teacher and ed tech enthusiast, and I want to join you on your journey to becoming the best instructor that you possibly can. So if you're ready, grab your adventuring gear and let's get going. Hey, what's up, 8-Bit crew? Today is Thursday, November the 12th, and this is episode 16 of the 8-Bit Instructor Podcast. I hope everybody's doing well today. We are making our way through the year. We're getting close to the end of the first semester, and 2020 is still being 2020, but that is okay. We will continue on and we will persevere, right? I've got some really great stuff lined up for you today. On the boss battle segment today, I'm going to share a bunch of tips and tricks that I have learned about Google Slides. So please stay tuned for that. Look forward to that one. As far as news and updates goes, I don't have a whole lot. I did not see a lot of news and updates going on in the education world recently. But if you have been around, you know that there's plenty of news and updates going on in our country. The election is, as far as when I recorded this, is over. Who knows what might actually happen in the coming weeks. But you guys know how it's been. It's been just a crazy season, and hopefully things will settle down now that some of this stuff has been decided. Now, when I took a look at the treasure chest was empty today, and that's because I emptied out all of my tips and tricks for the boss battle segment coming up in the next section. So I don't really have a treasure chest for you today because this whole episode is a treasure chest of knowledge. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and head on over. We're going to get our gear ready. We're going to get our weapons out. We're going to get our shields ready, because up next is quite the boss battle to help us learn Google Slides. Welcome to the boss battle. Today we're going to get a little bit techie, and we're going to talk about some Google Slides stuff. If you aren't familiar with Google Slides, it's Google's presentation app, but there's so much more that you can do with Google Slides. And if any of you are familiar with Casey Bell, listen to her podcast or anything like that, she talks about Google Slides as being the Swiss Army knife of the Google Workspace suite. And I definitely agree. As I've expanded my knowledge and ideas of what I use Google Slides for, I've started to see a lot of the versatility and the things that you can do with Google Slides. So today I'm just sharing out a bunch of my tips and tricks and things I've learned about Google Slides, using Google Slides in a variety of ways in order to make the most out of it in classroom and take it really beyond a simple presentation tool and using it for things in class and all that. So let's go ahead and jump into it because I've got a lot to cover today. So the first thing that I want to start with that kind of sets up everything else that I'll be talking about is that you can change the dimensions in a slide presentation. Some of you may or may not know that. When you first open a slide deck, then you're set with that standard kind of 4:3 ratio, the horizontal presentation screen aspect, but you can actually change it. There's, the widescreen defaults, but you can also create custom dimensions. So if you go to File and Page Setup, you can click the pull-down menu and use Custom, and you can change it based on inches, or you can use pixels or anything like that. So the reason that is significant is you can take it from the horizontal view presentation show into something that looks more like a traditional piece of paper, like a 8.5 by 11 inch page, and use that for various things. So it's great for like digital learning. If you've got students online, to be able to put together work for them to do in maybe a Google slide deck to do that. And you can just change those dimensions to give it that different look, that different feel. Additionally, in that file menu, a couple of other little things that people often might overlook is one, being able to import slides from another presentation. So let's say you have another presentation or a template presentation that you found from somewhere else. You like the design, you like the layout and all that. You can copy and paste stuff into the slides, but if you go to File and click Import Slides, you can select that particular slide deck and it will import all the different slides in there, and you can use them in your own, just as another template kind of thing. Something similar is to just make a copy of the presentation. There's a make a copy menu under the file menu, but one of the really great things is you're not just limited to duplicating an entire slide deck. So if you have, say, slides that you use weekly, you can open that up and select just those slides that you'll be using the following week. And when you go to the Make a Copy menu under File, you'll see an option to make a copy of selected slides. And that way you don't have to go through and delete all those extra ones and all that. So a few different things to check out in that File menu that are, often overlooked, but things that can be very helpful and unique in Google Slides. The next thing I want to talk about is just some ideas and tips for things that you can insert into slides. So most people know that you can insert images into slides, but now in recent updates to Google Slides, there are lots of other things that you can insert into slide presentations. And the primary ones that I want to talk about is audio and video and some things that you can do with that. So audio is a new thing that Slides has just recently, in the last few months, opened up to being able to add. And so you can go in and you can add any audio file that is in your Google Drive. Now, again, you got to remember to check permissions on that, which as a recent update of Google Slides will check all of those different things for you. But a few things I wanted to kind of look at is some of the formatting options and things that you can do with audio. So if you have an audio file in your Google Drive, you can click the Insert menu and Insert Audio and select it, and it will stick a little speaker icon onto the slide for you. But there are a few things that you can do with it. So if you click on the icon for the audio, you'll see in the toolbar menu that you have an option, Format Options, and it will bring up a sidebar. And there's a few things that you can do with audio. So you can set it to start play on a click, or you can set it to automatically play when that slide opens up. Additionally, you can set it to loop audio. So if you have maybe some background music that you want on a slide, if it's sitting on there for a while, it will just keep looping that background music. And I like to use that a lot to help with some different slides that I use in class to kind of set the tone for things that we're doing in class. I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of interesting. So you have that. You can also set it to toggle it, whether you want it to just stop on slide change or if you want it to keep playing through the entire presentation. As of now, you can only do one or the other. It will play on a single slide or it will play throughout the whole presentation. Hopefully soon, maybe Google will add an option of being able to set up how a certain number of slides or being able to play it throughout a few slides on there. But audio is something that can really enhance some of those presentations. So kind of like I mentioned before, you can add some background music over the top of things. But also think about using stuff like voiceovers. You can have voiceover explanations of things. If you don't want to create an entire video on your presentation for students to watch, you can record voiceover audio files for each individual slide. So you can have a slide where you are actually explaining the information on the slide itself, and as the students click through each slide, they are listening to you elaborate and explain on some of those. So that's an interesting new way that you can add some more to some of those presentations even. The other thing that I want to kind of look at with inserting multimedia is a couple of things you can do with videos. So inserting videos has always been there, and it's super easy to use. Google owning YouTube now, YouTube videos integrate very easily into slides, but also always keep in mind that there's an option that you can insert a video URL. So you don't have to, if it's something outside of YouTube, you can just get the URL of the video and add it in there as well. But a couple of the options too, if you select the video and then click on the format options menu in the toolbar, you'll see that there is an option to mute audio. So I like to use this a lot with timer countdowns that I use on certain slides. So for our maybe daily warm up, if I only want that to be 5 minutes, I'll stick a 5-minute timer on that slide and have it play during that time. So one, students will know how much time they have. Two, it keeps me accountable and helps me to make sure that I'm managing the time well, because I tend to forget about that. So you have that timer on there, but I can mute the audio so that if there is any kind of sound or anything on that video, it's not playing through. And then similar to what you have with the audio is you have options to toggle on when you want it to play. You can set it to play automatically if you want it to start immediately when that slide goes on. You can set it to manually, or you can set it on to start on a click, which is a new thing that I really love. And I think I mentioned it either last week or the week before, so that it's not me manually having to move the cursor over to the video. I can just click with my clicker or mouse, and it's going to start playing that video. All right, let's talk some design. So I love graphic design. I love doing graphic art stuff. And so a lot of the things that Google has integrated into Google Slides has really made it fun for me from a design standpoint. So a few tips and things to keep in mind while you're designing slides, things to make it just more aesthetically pleasing and engaging. And just that overall look and appeal. One, I always suggest to use shapes instead of text boxes. So if you don't know, the shapes button gives you a variety of shapes that you can insert into a Google slide. But if you double click on the shape, you can add text to it. So rather than having that default clear text box that you don't always know where it is, you can create a shape, double click in there, type information in, and it gives you a lot more control over what you can do with that. So when you add a text into a shape, you can change colors, you can use gradients, you can toggle the transparency to give it a pleasing look. So if you've got a background image maybe on there, you can have a low transparency shape with text on it that is still readable, but also does not block the image that you're trying to put on there. So definitely I would suggest using shapes. You can use a variety of shapes. You can even change it. If you don't like it, you can just right click onto the shape and find the change shape option to make it into something else. So that is great and it's helpful. Another tip with design is using the Recolor option. A lot of people don't know about this one as well. If you have, like, let's say an icon or some kind of image in there, you can't alter the color of it. So if you find some kind of icon or symbol on a website that you want to use, but it is in a weird color that you don't necessarily like, you do have it's a limited number of options, but ways that you can recolor that image. So if you select the image and then click on the format options in the toolbar, you're going to pull up that format options sidebar, and now you have a pull down menu option that says recolor. And it will recolor it into some default kind of colors. And like I said, it's not great and wonderful. It's not something like you could do in Photoshop, but it does give you a few more options over what you can do with images to kind of create some of that unity and some of that cohesiveness onto a specific slide. Another option that you have in that format options menu that is really great is the drop shadow option. And so if you click on, you can use it for shapes, you can use it for images, and it just adds a nice little shadow behind the image or the object to give it a little bit of a 3D look. It kind of separates some of that stuff out to give it that nice little aesthetic to it. Another thing that you could do with a shape or an image is to add a border as well. So there is a border button. It's up on the toolbar menu when you select an object, and it's right in there next to the fill color button. But you can select a variety of colors. You can adjust the weight to make it thicker or thinner. You can also adjust the pattern, whether you want a solid line, dashes, dots, anything like that. So it's a nice little way to work that stuff in. And like I said, it works on shapes, it works on images, it even works on videos. You can add a border around a video, just again to give it that kind of cohesive feel so that it doesn't look overly obvious like you just have some images and videos dropped in there. Now, on the topic of altering images as well, one of the things that I love is the mask images option. So a lot of you probably know about cropping images, and there is a crop button in Google Slides. And if you select that, it allows you to just cut pieces of an image out that aren't needed. So if you've got a lot of extra space in a picture, you can crop it out so that it just focuses on the image itself. But one of the cool features in Google Slides is the ability to mask rather than just crop. And what that does is that allows you to use any of the shapes in Google Slides to basically crop that picture out. So if you don't want just the straight square cornered kind of idea, there's a pull down menu attached to the crop button that pulls the shape menu up. And when you select that shape, it's going to alter the image into that shape. So let's say you don't like the square corner look, you can mask it with a rounded corner rectangle, for example, and it gives the image, round corners. Or you can use the heart shape to put a picture inside of a heart or anything like that. So again, it adds a little bit of that variety, gives it a nice little look there. And then the last thing I'll say about objects and pictures and images and all that is using some of the arrange options to help you align things better. So if you select multiple images, you can use the arrange menu. If you right click after selecting that, you'll see your ability to align, to distribute, and to center elements. So align would just line them up vertically or horizontally, so you can have them all lined up in that same way. Distribute would evenly space images out. So if you have several images across the slide, you can use the distribute option so that they're evenly spaced out, so you're not having to click and drag and try to guess if it looks good or not. And then if all of them are selected, you can use the center element to center it horizontally or vertically on the page. And those are just some really time-saving ideas so that you can line things up a lot easier without having to click and drag and all of that. Now, the next thing on my list is something that is really great for instruction and helping keep students organized and helping keeping them all together. And not just students, anybody that looks at any of your presentation documents or anything like that. And that is the ability to link elements. So if you select an object, a shape, an image, a text, anything like that, you're able to link to other things. You can link to websites, you can link to documents in your Google Drive, and you can even link to other slides on the presentation itself. So when you select that object or highlight that text, you're going to want to use the shortcut on the keyboard, Control K or Command K if you're on a Mac, and it's going to pull the Add a Link menu. From there, you can add the URL from a website if you want, or if you are wanting to link to another slide, you can use the pull-down menu to link to a specific slide in the presentation. So one of the great things with that is you can build your own interactive activities, slide decks for students to use, possibly. If you remember back in an earlier episode, John Meehan joined me, and he has a slide deck thing that he uses that a lot of people have made their own versions of, which is a QR break-in, which is just a series of activities set up in Google Slides, but a lot of that has different elements linked to it, linking to different slides, linking to different websites, so that students are doing a variety of activities on different websites like Flipgrid and whatnot. But it's all linked in that single presentation, so they're not having to go look for everything. It's all just right there. So the ability to add links to documents, to websites and all that is super helpful, especially if you have students who are learning digital virtual and you're not right there with them to be able to help them out. So definitely make use of the linking feature that is in Google Slides and all of the Google apps, really. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about is one of the things that really makes a lot of the Google apps shine, and that is the add-ons, which are third-party integrations that you can add into these different apps to improve the flexibility and usability of Google Slides. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to just share some of my favorite add-ons that I have found in Google Slides. And if you have any that you love, definitely reach out, comment, and all that, because I'm always looking for new things that can help out. So a few of the add-ons that I really love. One is the Unsplash Add-On. Unsplash is a royalty-free image site that has lots of really high-quality images. And their add-on with Google Slides is great because you can search for, your keyword for images. When you find an image that you like, when you click on it, the add-on will automatically add the image to your slide, but it will also automatically crop that image to fit that standard size slide presentation. So if you use Unsplash for background images, it's really simple and really easy to add in there, and you don't have to do a lot of the resizing and cropping for the image. I also really like the Noun Project add-on. The Noun Project has tons of icons, and so the add-on in Google Slides allows you to find the icons, but also pick the color and add it in there really easy and seamlessly. I love the Pear Deck add-on. Pear Deck is a website that allows you to take Google Slides and make them more interactive for students to get that immediate feedback from them. And I'm actually this episode is releasing on Thursday, November 12th, and I'm actually doing a presentation on Pear Deck at the Georgia EdTech Convention virtually online Thursday evening. So if you are registered for Georgia EdTech Convention and are interested in learning about Pear Deck, definitely check my session out. I also like the Poll Everywhere add-on. It's another kind of interactive way to do single kind of questions, multiple choice, or doing polls or word clouds or anything like that, so that you can see some of that immediate feedback from students. And it's really easy to integrate into Google Slides. And also something new that I have recently come across that I have not checked out a ton, but is something that I am looking forward to learning more about, and that is the Slip and Slide add-on, which is, to break it down, as far as I understand it, is a way to add slides into a slide deck that has already been copied. So, if you made a slide deck and put it in your Google Classroom and then set it to make a copy for students, let's say you wanted to add something to it. After it makes a copy for those students, you're not able to add that slide into the copies that are made for them. But this Slip and Slide add-on actually is set up so that you can add on throughout the year if you want to. I know my wife and some other teachers at our school are doing these digital online notebooks for their classes this year, and they're using Google Slides with that. But as they create new pages for that digital notebook, that app is able to add those into what was already created for them. So definitely check those add-ons out. The last little tip that I have is some tricks that you can do with the actual URLs of slides presentations when you share those out. So if you are familiar with the idea of sharing, every slide deck presentation, same thing with any Google Doc or any other Google app, has its own specific URL. But if you have ever gone through the process of sharing some of this stuff out, you know that it can get really sticky very quickly with the permissions that are set. You always get emails asking for permission to open it up and all this kind of stuff. So there are things that you can do with the URL to set up some tricks to help alleviate some of that for you. And it all has to do with looking after that final backslash in the URL. So if you copy the link to your Google presentation, when you paste it somewhere, you'll notice that the final backslash usually has an edit, the hashtag #, and then a bunch of numbers and letters. So if you erase everything after that final backslash, there are a few things that you can type in there to alter what happens when somebody opens that link. So for example, if you put the word copy in after that final backslash, when anybody clicks on that link, instead of being able to open up the presentation, it's going to go to a page that is going to force them to make a copy. So it's just a little blue button that says make a copy. So that /copy command, it forgoes anybody altering your presentation, potentially having editing privileges on it and all that. It just automatically makes it a copy for them. Similarly, you can use the template view, which does some of the same. It's the final backslash, you type in the word template /preview. It does something similar where they will see the presentation in kind of a preview mode. And then there's a button that says use as template that will kind of make that copy for them as well. Another one that I like to use with students is the present command. So you can do the final backslash and then the word present. And what that does is when they click on that link, rather than seeing the typical slide deck editing thing with all of the thumbnail slides on the left-hand side and the speaker notes and then and all that, it puts it just in presentation mode into a full screen presentation mode to make it easier to see. And so I like to use that when students are working through things because it keeps them from all the distractions of all that extra stuff. It's just the presentation. And then another thing that is very useful on those commands is /export/PDF. And that will share out a downloadable PDF version of that presentation. So if you want something that people can potentially print out or have just a document for themselves, you can use that export/PDF command to do that. Now, the last thing I want to talk about are just some ideas of things that you can do with Google Slides outside of just a standard presentation in class talking through information. So one of the things that I like doing, you can create PDFs of this. So let's say you change the dimensions to this 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper kind of thing. You could do something like create a digital magazine or maybe a class newsletter or something like that and save it as a PDF file. So when you go to the file menu, you can export it as a PDF. And then it just takes all of those slides and puts them into a PDF multi-page document, which I think is kind of a cool thing. So there's a lot of ideas that you could use for that. And again, Google Slides' advantage over something like Google Docs is that you're able to manipulate and move stuff around a lot easier. So if you're doing anything that has any kind of combination of text and images, Google Slides is probably going to be better for you than maybe Google Docs. Google Docs is great if all you're using really is text. So you can create PDFs out of that. Another thing that I like doing a lot is using it to create PNG or Jpeg picture files. So you can take a single slide within a presentation, and when you select that, you can export it into a PNG or a Jpeg file. And this is great if you're trying to design just some image-based stuff for class. To go to kind of my next idea is using it to create Google Classroom banners. So you can take the dimensions of that Google Classroom banner, because you're able to upload your own images if you want. And I'll have to look it up. I want to say it's something like 1600 pixels by 400 or something along those lines. I'll look that up and put it in the show notes. But you can design the actual banner in Google Slides, and then you can save it and export it into a PNG image file, and then upload that as the banner into your Google Classroom. So you can think about ways that students could do stuff like this. So I know there's the bumper sticker activity that a lot of people use as summarizers. You could design your own template for students, or you could just give them the dimensions for that and set it up, and then they can save their bumper sticker as an image file, and then you can have them post it somewhere, on your Google Classroom, or even print them out and hang them up around your room. So there's some cool things you can do with that, with saving those as image files. Another thing that I really like to do is use Google Slides to create GIF files. And yes, I say GIF. I'm not a GIF guy. I'm a GIF guy. So there are two different things, two different ways that you can do this. So one is by using the website Tall Tweets to create your own file. And basically what Tall Tweets will do on that website is it will take any kind of slide deck presentation, and each slide will be a part of that GIF file. So if you have maybe a series of words and that you want it to kind of click through or whatever, it will save that as its own GIF file that will continuously loop through that. And then another thing that I've recently used is if I insert any kind of GIF files into a slide deck and wanted to create my own out of that, I noticed that the GIF files only save as individual picture files. And so one workaround that I did is I used Screencastify to record a video of that presentation, and then you can export that video into its own GIF file. So just to give you an example, and I'll put some examples of things that I've created up in the show notes, I took some custom classroom banners that I made for my Google Classroom, but I wanted to kind of up it a little bit and make it a GIF file. And so I have my standard banner with the unit title and all that, but then I added some GIFs in there just to make it a little more fun. And then I did a screencast of that banner with the GIF just kind of looping a few times, and then I exported it into a GIF file. So check out the show notes and you can see what I'm talking about. But really, that's all the tips and tricks that I have as far as Google Slides go. There's so many more out there that I probably didn't think of, but hopefully that gives you some ideas of things that you can do with Google Slides to take your teaching kind of to that next level and to really level up some of those things that you're doing in class. So with that being said, let's go on forward now that we've leveled up and head on to the crew members bulletin board. All right, so I just spent quite a bit of time talking about some tips and tricks and things that I've learned about Google Slides. Now it's your turn. This week's 8-Bit Crew question of the week. What are some of your favorite tips that you've come across for Google Slides? And also, I'd like to know, what do you like to use slides for besides presentations in your class? So hit me up with some of your ideas. I love getting new ideas and seeing things that I can implement in class. So make sure you share some of those ideas with the 8-Bit Crew community. Use the hashtag 8-Bit Crew on Twitter, and you can post any longer stories or anything like that on the comments section at the episode page on 8bitinstructor.com. Well, thanks so much for listening to this episode. I hope that you were able to get some great things out of it and new ideas to use in your classroom. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Comic Socks and use the hashtag 8bitcrew. Check out my website, 8bitinstructor.com, for some blogs and other presentations and things that I've done. And you can check out my YouTube channel for some EdTech tutorials and tips. If you want to support the show, you can support me on Patreon by going to the website patreon.com/8bitinstructor. All right, well, keep it up. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep getting out there and creating those authentic learning experiences for your students. Keep getting out there and leveling up your teaching craft. And until next week, may your swords stay sharp and your shields hold strong. Thanks so much for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check out the 8-Bit Instructor YouTube channel for EdTech tips and tutorials, as well as other content on my website, 8bitinstructor.com. And of course, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at ComicSocks and use the hashtag 8bitcrew. See you next week.